hiring on the Culture Inc. So I don't
It
think
is.
it's right to say back, but you know what
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean.
that's true. Yeah. Back in the studio with me.
Yes. I missed
Basically.
you so much, SJ,
I
and
for
our
some
listeners.
reason, I always thought that you were gonna come back.
Yeah?
We just didn't know what segment.
Oh, thank you.
Really, for some reason, I think I said this. You were doing the news, and then you were like waving to your fans.
Yes.
Right, because Yangudo keeps on saying like wave for us and stuff like that.
Thank you for officially hiring me for the Culture Inc.
That's right. But I have some problems though.
TF leader.
You're TF leader.
Follow me.
She's TF leader. She's got a higher ranking than I do. Oh my
SJ,
goodness. What?
You got some works to do.
I know. It seems like. You know what it is?
What are you doing?
I think I know what it
You
is.
still have like an hour left.
No. I think I know what it is. It's because I'm a foreigner.
Ah.
It's because I'm a 미국 사람. Is that what it is? Is that what's going on right now? It's because I'm a 미국 사람. I don't get promoted. Nah, jokes. We're going to be going into some major issues that everybody's been talking about in the office. It's been in the news and so forth. And the first topic that we're going to be talking about is the suspected sudden acceleration incident over in Gangneung. This happened years ago.
Yes.
And this is a very heartbreaking incident, right? 2022?
It is. Well, back in December 2022, a tragic incident in the city of Gangneung shocked the nation. A 68-year-old woman driving her SUV lost control of the vehicle, resulting in a crash that killed her 12-year-old grandson, Do-hyun.
Yeah.
And the accident believed by the family to be a case of sudden unintended acceleration has since sparked a national debate. And the family insists that this was not driver error.
No.
They say the acceleration continued uncontrollably for about like 30 seconds, something they argue cannot be caused by mistaking the gas pedal for the brake, and they believe it was a software defect in the vehicle's ECU, the electronic control unit. And I guess some of our listeners might have seen the footage. Have you seen the recorded footage?
Yeah.
Yeah, in this recorded black box footage, the grandmother is heard repeatedly saying, "Why isn't this working? What's going on?" While urgently, desperately calling out her grandson's name, 도연아. It was just so heartbreaking. And watching the video, many, myself included, are led to believe that she did her best to stop the car by pressing the brake, but the brakes likely failed due to a mechanical defect. But the car maker, KGM, disputes this. They point to data from the car's event data recorder showing full throttle input and cite an analysis by the National Forensic Service saying no mechanical fault was found in the braking system. And I was very confused because the forensic analysis was completely different from my initial impressions after watching the recorded footage.
So again, I mean, it's very heartbreaking, right? It's one thing that your grandson and, you know, grandmas,
Right.
they love their grandchildren more than anything, right? More than their own children.
That's true.
And for her to lose, and I think that was the big story was the family wanted to assure the driver, 68-year-old grandmother, that it wasn't her fault.
Right.
It wasn't her fault that her grandchild died, and it was a mechanical error and things like that. But the thing is, right, it's very rare. It is very rare for sudden unintended acceleration to happen in cars. Very rare. It's not like it doesn't happen. It does happen, right? But it's very rare. Do you remember the City Hall incident?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember like the outcome of that? I mean, it turned out that it was his fault.
His fault, yes.
When you are driving, have you ever been like when you drive and you panic? You don't know what to press.
Yes. No, I haven't, but I
Right.
think it can happen.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like extremely panicked.
I remember when I was like first driving, right? And then I went into like the wrong exit. And then I was panicking. And then next thing you know, I have the wipers turning and everything like that. You start doing a whole bunch of stuff. And so because the gas pedal and the brake pedal are so close to each other,
Yes.
you might think that you're pressing on the brake, but you could be pressing on the gas pedal is what it is. But
is.
yeah. And I don't know how to think about this, to be honest with you. And then I think the court ruling came out. and they ruled in favor of the automaker.
The automaker, yes. And it's hard to deny the forensic analysis after all. But, right after the verdict was delivered, Do-yeon's father, of course, immediately announced his intention to appeal. He criticized the decision as one that chose corporate logic over truth and the manufacturer's excuse over the victim. And he added that he would not make an emotional appeal, but as an ordinary citizen, he had done his best to over 2 years to fulfill the burden of proof himself as an ordinary citizen again. And the fact that not a single point was acknowledged in the court makes it impossible for him to accept the outcome. And he emphasized that for the sake, for his late son, he would fight with all his strength in the appeal and ignite a spark for revising the Product Liability Act.
You know what the difficult thing about this is that, again, even
It's
though...
about the family.
Yeah, I mean, one thing is, I mean, not even just this family, though, because this is not the first time we've talked about sudden acceleration, right? But although most of the time it's the driver's fault, when you take it to the court and you have to prove that you have to prove your innocence, the defendant, right, or you could even say you're the plaintiff, I guess. Whoever the driver is, they have to take money out of your own pocket,
Yes,
send it to
that's
analysis.
true.
You have to do all that stuff. That's very difficult to do, and you're fighting against a corporate that basically knows everything, every little detail about the car.
Yes, right. And usually ordinary people do not have legal backgrounds, so it's
No.
really hard to fight against those big corporate. And also, this case also reflects the issues surrounding elderly drivers and generational tensions as well.
Yeah.
Recently, there has been a rise in car accident among the elderly when sudden unintended acceleration is cited as the cause, including the City Hall case, like you mentioned, leading to ongoing debate over whether these incidents are due to mechanical failure or driver error.
But see, the thing is, though, if you look at some of the more recent sudden acceleration incidents, the City Hall, this incident, there was a issue with a taxi driver. They all say it was sudden, unintended sudden acceleration, but it wasn't. And they're all of certain age. They're seniors.
Right. That's
And
right.
I mean, there's always a debate about, how old should you turn in your license?
Yes.
And it's not being ageist. We're not trying to target, seniors and say you're a terrible driver. My dad's a
no.
senior. He's a great driver. But it all seems to be, is it coincidence that this is all happening, right?
Yes. And at the same time, we have to face the fact that Korean society continues to age. So instead of just banning senior citizens from driving, which could also raise concerns about restricting their mobility, it seems more important to refine licensing system to better identify high-risk drivers.
Chris Rhodes over in Leeds, who hates electric cars, by the way. This won't get any better how quick electric cars can accelerate. They need to slow them down for the older people. But electric cars, the other problem is that fires.
Right.
And there's been cases where drivers couldn't get out of the car because of some errors and stuff like that. They get trapped inside this. I didn't know this, but our producer was saying, remember how I was saying that if you want to get into a court case, lawsuit over sudden unintended acceleration, you have to do all the research and
By
all that
yourself.
stuff. Apparently that's for medical malpractice too.
Yes.
That's crazy.
That's why it took over 2 years for Do-yeon's parents to prove it.
I mean, I'm not saying that, she's innocent or anything like that, or she's guilty, but there needs to be better support
Yes.
for people going through this. All right. It really is an unfortunate incident. We have more issues that we're going to be talking in our program today with this special issue task force. But first, let's take a listen to a song here from Cheokjae with Letter 잘 지내. All right, the last track was Cheokjae with Letter 잘 지내. We got messages in regards to this. Shinta over in Indonesia says, unintended pressing gas instead of brake. Well, in my own experience, that's likely never happened. The foot itself knows where the gas and the brake pedal automatically is. But again, when you're panicking.
Right.
And you're
It's a whole different story.
Yeah, and when you're a senior. Because there was a video that I saw. It was a taxi driver one. he was like, oh my goodness, the brake is not working, brake is not working. And then he kept on going and he slammed into a wall. Luckily, it was only him that was hurt. And apparently this taxi had a camera. Nowadays, they're putting cameras in the pedal area.
Yes.
And it showed that he was not pressing the brake. He was pressing the accelerator the whole time.
Oh, no.
He was panicking, basically. He panicked, and even though sometimes you do things for a really, really long time, like what was it? You know, the other day, I was like, this is SJ Lee with Korea Now. Even though,
I heard that.
I've been saying Culture Inc. for 2 months, but sometimes brain fart.
Unintentionally, it comes out.
Yeah, and that's what it is. Fast says maybe the accelerator paddle needs to be made a little bit stickier, heavier, harder to press for a certain few car models. Then it makes it even more confusing because the brake pedal is very heavy, right? I mean, not very, but it's heavier. So people are going to get confused more, I think. Continue to send in your messages in regards to this. I'll read those out. The second topic that we're going to be talking about is an interesting one. It's something, a change that the government is finally making thanks to major issues that we had.
Right.
Adoption system.
Yeah. The change comes in response to a series of tragic and high-profile child abuse cases involving adopted children. And, you know, under the old system, most adoptions were handled by private agencies, some of which have been accused of prioritizing speed and quotas over thorough screening. And some pundits argue that there were few safeguards or post-adoption follow-ups, which is really important. And one case that sparked public outrage was, I guess you remember this case, SJ, the 2020 death of an adopted toddler named Jong-in, who was abused by her adoptive parents despite supposedly passing all agency screenings. And her story caused public outrage and national soul-searching and became a turning point in how the country views adoption.
So the latest news that came out was that now when adoption programs were done by private institutions or agencies now, with a completely changed policy, it's all going to be run by the government. By local governments and so forth. And so depending on which neighborhood and stuff like that, the city will take care of it or the province will take it or the particular town will take care of it and stuff like that. And what they're trying to do is so that there is more filtering process and that there is records that are going to be kept in. Jong-in's case was terrible. Okay.
It
that was, again, a domestic case. But the government is also going to take in the domestic and overseas cases because, as you know, back in the 80s, I mean, we found out that many children in Korea that were sent off for adoption weren't put in for adoption.
Right.
What
really
happened?
Hard to believe. You know, a recent documentary aired on one of the major broadcasting stations here in Korea shed light on human rights violations during Korea's overseas adoption boom in the 1980s, revealing widespread abuse and mishandled records. And it highlighted the deep emotional scars of adoptees and underscored the urgent need for stronger government oversight and accountability in adoption practices as well.
So some of the cases, what was happening is like random kid, right? He was just lost or running around the neighborhood, and the adoption agency, knowing that they'll get good money out of kids that they would adopt over to like the United States and things like that, would take the child, send them over with no screening, very little paperwork, send them over to, let's say, the United States. The parents never find the child. And years down the line, they find out that they were never put up for adoption. And so I think that the private adoption center there was one that was targeted was over in Busan and stuff like that. But I mean, it's incredible. There was this girl I interviewed years ago from a different show. So it was like Adoption Day or something like that. And so I had interviewed a girl who was adopted to the U.S. She was originally born in Korea. And so
how old she was when she was adopted?
She was newborn.
Newborn, okay.
But the crazy thing with this is that she wanted to find her birth parents. And so, I mean, a lot of people want to find their birth parents,
when they grow up.
And so she did not, there was no records. And she somehow, with the help of different like sources and like a private, what is it, detective or something like that, she found her mom.
Oh.
Right? Parents were never together because they weren't married. Turns out, when she asked her, why did you put me up for adoption? Her mom said, you were never put up for adoption.
Oh my.
Her mother, so her grandmother did not want her daughter to be an unmarried, unwed mother. Put her up for adoption.
So it was her grandmother's
It was a
choice.
grandmother's choice, not even the parent.
No.
And so back then, because she was around my age, right? And this was years ago, so she was in her 20s back then. She was so shocked. And incidents like this were things that were actually happening. And now the government is going to crack down on this.
Right. It really needs to be done. And I also want to touch upon the social stigma, especially in Korea. Adoption has long carried a social stigma because, bloodline-focused families culture. And it's not uncommon for families to hide an adoption or avoid it altogether. And this stigma, rooted in, of course, Confucian tradition, emphasizing family lineage, has made it harder for adoptees and adoptive parents alike. But fortunately, recent years have seen a gradual culture shift as well, though it's really slow, but stepping forward little by little, I believe. And more Koreans are beginning to view adoption as a valid, loving choice rather than a last resort. So I think it's a great change, culture shift.
You're giving a second chance to these children who deserve a second chance, right? But also with second chance comes a great deal of responsibility for the adopted parents.
Of course. And I also want to talk about the celebrity figures who've adopted or spoken out about it.
Angelina Jolie.
And Shinara or Taehyung
That's right.
couple in Korea have helped change the narrative. And speaking of celebrities, I believe media indeed has played a big role. And going back to Jong인's case, after the incident, the phrase 정인아, I'm sorry, 정인아 미안해, trended across social media and public protests called for reform. So we're living in a country where online activism moves fast and public sentiment can rapidly shift. And I believe these movements were a key part of the legal changes we're seeing today.
Yeah, and especially because nowadays there are couples who just cannot give birth to a child, but they want children so much. For our listeners who are not familiar with Jongin, like, I don't want to get too into this because it's so painful to talk about.
She was adopted by adoptive parents when she was 8 months old, but she lost her life when she turned 16 months old because of the child abuse.
She was being abused by her adoptive parents.
Brutally abused.
It was terrible. And the reason why, I don't know if they actually revealed why, but they adopted her so that they could have enough household number to get the real estate lottery was what it was. And when they found out,
It was terrible.
Walter and I, of Arirang, Walter and I did a little podcast last year on crimes called Kimchi Crime. We did a bit on Jongin. If anybody wants to watch it, I don't encourage you guys to watch it. It's very heartbreaking. But this is another incident that really made the government want to change the system that we have
surely.
here.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, I don't want to think about it.
Did you send a handwritten petition?
No.
Back in 2000.
You could?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was only like my first child was only 7 months old, so I just totally resonated with this case. So yes, a lot of parents did back then.
One of the worst child abuse cases I've ever seen out there. We're going to continue to talk about our special issue of the week. Another short song break here. This is Nerd Connection with If I Have You Only 그대만 있다면. That was Nerd Connection with If I Have You Only 그대만 있다면. This is Special Task Force with Haeyoung joining us in the studio for the first time here on Culture Inc. We're doing it as two parents. We're just talking about all the issues that happen, the incidents that happen, and it's oh my goodness, it's hard to talk about here.
Yeah.
Let's talk about other stuff right now. Over the next few weeks now, this is the major issue. We're talking about South Korea's snap elections. The first TV debate happened on Sunday.
Have you watched it?
No?
You haven't?
I was okay. So I was coming home from my family vacation, so I didn't get to watch it. Also, I didn't want to watch it. But let's talk about this.
Yes, South Korea's June 3rd presidential election is just 2 weeks away. Can you believe it? And the first live TV debate between the major candidates was held on this past Sunday. I watched it with my kids because my kids refused to go to sleep.
So your kids were like, I wonder what candidate so-and-so's reform plans are. Is that what was going on?
They didn't understand a thing, but they just sat down with me and watched it all together. And of course, it was a high-stakes night because, again, this was the first time that the four major candidates stood side by side and presented their visions, or in some cases, attacked one another.
I mean, there's always going to be a lot of attacking that happens
yes.
on debates right now.
Right.
Let's talk about, obviously, not only are there attacking going on, but they're also going to tell the nation what their pledges are.
Visions,
so
yes.
let's talk about some of the key visions here, key pledges. Let's start off with candidate number one, DP, Democratic Party's Lee Jae-myung.
Yes, Lee Jae-myung, the current frontrunner. He is, of course, representing the Democratic Party, appeared calm and composed throughout. And as you know, his experience, this is his third time running for the presidential election.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh my goodness, I thought it was the second time.
And he presented himself as a stable leader, focused heavily on post-crisis economic recovery. And of course, as the leading presidential contender, Lee Jae-myung faced numerous attacks during the televised debate, particularly from Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-suk.
Yeah.
It was harsh.
The thing about Lee Jae-myung is if you look at the polls, he's in the lead right now. So if he just goes off and goes wild, then he has a lot to lose.
Yes.
And so he's going to do his best to just stay composed and just
Right.
pitch out his ideas. And even him attacking would not work in his favor because, again, he has the lead here. Candidate number two, People Power Party's Kim Moon-soo.
Kim Moon-soo had a lot to prove, and his camp actually feared the debate format would expose weaknesses. I mean, he's the candidate from People Power Party, the same party as the impeached former President Yoon Suk-yeol. And that alone puts him in a very disadvantaged position with so much he needs to explain or justify. But according to his staff, he did better than expected. And overall, he focused on reinforcing trust with the U.S. And in line with that, he on Monday visited the American Chamber of Commerce and said he'd meet the U.S. President Donald Trump right away if elected. But since Kim previously led an ultra-right party known for its ties to the so-called 태극기 movement, 태극기 부대, and many moderate conservatives worry that his party is shifting too far to the right. So we'll have to keep an eye on whether he will be able to earn the hearts of the moderate conservatives and what kind of strategies he will present to do so.
Number three, we skip because the Choguk's party is not sending anybody off. And
Right.
third candidate is number four on the ballot, Lee Jun-suk from the New Reform Party.
Lee Jun-suk, he took a very sharp approach, focusing
Yep.
most of his attacks on Lee Jae-myung, like I mentioned. And he wanted to, I believe, differentiate himself clearly as a younger and more dynamic candidate. And some saw his performance as energetic, and others thought it felt a bit too aggressive. But either way, he grabbed airtime and positioned himself as a bold alternative for Kim Moon-soo. But at the same time, still pulling a single digits. And although he firmly denies any possibility of a merger and insists on staying in the race until the very end, speculation about a potential unification with Kim Moon-soo still continues.
Very quickly, Labor Party's Kwon Young-guk, right? That was the last candidate.
Right. Kwon Young-guk may have been the least well-known before the debate, but he used this opportunity well. And from the very beginning, Kwon strongly pressured Kim Moon-soo to step down immediately, accusing him of being a proxy defending former impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol, who declared an illegal emergency martial law and threw the country into chaos.
Yeah.
He said Kim should feel shame and take responsibility by stepping down. And he also heavily criticized Trump's trade policies, calling them acts of economic aggression, not just tariffs. And his message stood in clear contrast to the others, especially Kim Moon-soo's pro-U.S. stance.
Yeah, and it was also interesting because right before, on the day that the TV debate was happening, former impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol actually left the party, right,
Yes,
to
he
PPP,
did. He
as
did.
with there was a lot of pressure on that, and whether or not that helps Kim Moon-soo at least a little bit, we'll have to see. But nevertheless, again, June 3rd is the snap election. I'm sure we'll talk more about that as we inch closer and closer. Hyung, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And it's good to see you again.
Good to see you.
And we'll see you every Tuesdays, right?
I'll see you next week.
All right, sending her out of the studio. Let's take a listen to a song here from 이세계 아이돌 with Misty Rainbow.